So the crown chakra, there's so much around it. There's also, in my opinion, a bit of a paradox about the crown chakra because yes, while it is all about matters of being unified, of unity, it's also about being somewhat detached and transcendent. That's so that you can reach to that connection to all that is. So it allows us to realize our intrinsic place in the fabric of all that is, along with recognizing our own specific uniqueness. So for this week, as we bring it to the close on our chakra series, I'm thrilled to invite in another gem, another jewel, another brilliant fellow coach and healer. Her name is Keira Lani, and she is here joining us on the vibe today to help us deepen our awareness of the chakras and health. But we're going to use a different metaphor in addition to chakras as a metaphor themselves. We're going to use the metaphor of trees. And before I bring her on, I have to tell you that several months ago, okay, it was probably more like a year, a friend of mine loaned me this book called The Hidden Life of Trees, which I found absolutely fascinating. Then, not very much long after that, I heard Keira preparing for a TEDx talk, and it was about trees and their ability to connect to the outside world, among other fascinating topics about trees. Next thing I knew, I found myself thinking about the chakra system. And in fact, that is what inspired me to bring this chakra series to the vibe. So it only seemed fitting that to end this series, that I would bring on the person who literally helped plant the seed about this idea. And she is here at long last. Hello, Kira. Just wave to us. There she is waving. Yay, yay, yay. Let me tell you quickly about Keira. Keira is the founder of Gong Healing and the creator of the Healer's Journey to Mastery. And she has more than 15 years experience as a healing arts practitioner. Keira offers virtual and live retreats, intensive training, and personal mentorship. After training for decades in multiple modalities, Keira combines ancient self-healing arts with scientific body knowledge to create a powerful transformational experience. And I know that she has lots of wisdom that she imparts to me whenever I am in her presence. She bravely explores her inner landscape and shadow self so that she can guide you on your inner journey. Welcome to the Vibe, Keira.
Hmm, thank you so much for having me, Yvonne. I really had no idea that my talk had this impact on you. I knew that you received some magic. I received that feedback that you gave me deeply to my heart, but how beautiful that you were able to take that seed and blossom into this amazing offering. What you just shared is so important for all of us to be able to embrace. And so I'm going to have to go back and catch some more of these vibes because I can just tell how much you're emanating wisdom and healing foundations for your audience. Thank you for doing this work.
Okay, so I want to get to the most burning and obvious question, which is, what do trees and chakras have in common? But first, let's learn a little bit about you.
I work primarily in energetic healing arts at this time in my life. I have a background in massage therapy and a deep understanding of how body mechanics work. My first entry into healing arts was yoga as a very, very young person. And so I bring a deep awareness of how energy works in our own individual body and in our collective unified consciousness field, which is kind of where we go with the crown chakra.
You call your business Tree Gong Healing. Why is that?
Hmm, that's a fun story. I have always had a connection with trees. As a young child, I lost my father really young, and my mother was already a yoga and meditation practitioner. And I was raised in the country, free to roam the woods. And so the forest became my sanctuary. And so I started meditating with trees very young and even speaking to trees very young. I had no idea that I could also hear the trees, but in my early 20s, I discovered a deeper connection with a particular tree that I had been visiting. My mother named this tree Grandpa Cedar, and I had been visiting this tree with her regularly for some time. And one day when she was gone in Hawaii, I went to visit this tree and it suddenly pulled me energetically in. And it was as if the energy from my belly went into the tree, all the way up to the tops of the branches. And I felt held there. It was as if the tree didn't want to let me go. And I felt the tree saying, I miss that lady who visits me every day. Where is she? And so I visualized my mother sitting on a beach in Hawaii. And I said, Grandpa Cedar, please look out for my mother way over there across the ocean. I had this idea that the tree was connected more deeply into this psychic energy field that I knew was available to all of us, but didn't really know how to work with at that time of my life. And then I started to gently withdraw my energy. I said, don't worry, we'll stay connected. And I went on my way. And my mother actually had a vision of Grandpa Cedar coming to her on the beach that day. And this was before I knew that book you held up. I know it talks about how the trees communicate through their roots. And now this tree gave me a vision of this communication network. And I didn't even know at that time that the mycelial network, which for those of you who don't know, is a network of mushroom roots that connect the roots of the trees. And scientists who have studied this have actually seen that they share nutrients and communication through these networks. Now, through my own personal experience, I've seen that trees have a similar network that goes through the ethers. And this is what I would think of as their crown chakra
Hmm.
network,
Yeah.
where the trees are actually communicating outside of their individual communities where they have these physical connections. They're also communicating through the energetic connections
Hmm.
that we all can access when we expand our awareness. So, a lot of my work with breath work and meditation and expansive healing experiences, energetic awareness, I like to call it developing your subtle awareness, can help us connect this way. And so I started working on my first 6 minute talk, and I wanted to practice, and I created a one time event called Tree Gong in the Park. My plan was I was going to talk about the trees, we were going to do some Qigong, and then I was going to offer an experience where other people can connect to the trees and feel this symbiotic relationship that's available to us as humans with trees. And I it was going to be a one time event, and everybody said, oh, Tree Gong, what's that? Did you patent that? You
Yeah.
should use that. And so that is how my business became tree gong healing.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Another thing that came to me as you were explaining the roots of the name of your business is that really from the beginning you were using the trees as a metaphor for healing and connection. So let's just play around with this concept of metaphor. And what I thought would be really fun, we haven't practiced this or really even talked about it, but I just feel as though we're on the same wavelength here, is for us to take a quick journey through the chakras, but also through the anatomy, I guess, of the tree or the functioning of a tree. And let's build let's find some new ahas that
Mm,
that can also point to um, ways for us to claim and sustain our our health, our vibrant health. So let's start with the root chakra. Why don't you talk about trees, and
mm.
then if something comes up about the chakras, throw it in. Otherwise, I'll throw in something about the root chakra, and we'll just go chakra by step by step.
Yes. So, of course, with a tree, the root chakra metaphor is pretty obvious because the roots are one of the most important ways that trees gather nutrients and also stabilize their bodies into the earth. And I love the way that trees connect to the earth. In Chinese medicine, the tree is very often used as a metaphor for our own personal healing and the way that we are connected to the earth and the heavens. And the five elements, trees are one of them in Chinese medicine. The wood element is when living a tree, right? And so I love to think of the way the roots hug the earth and actually stabilize the earth. We think of the earth as the stabilizing force. When the roots are in the earth, the tree is actually holding the earth in place as well as receiving nourishment from the earth. And so this is where we connect to our grounding, our nourishment from the earth, stabilizing factors in our life. How do we stabilize when the winds come and blow on our trunks? How do we hold our ground when life is throwing wild experiences our way?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. And the root chakra represents what much of what you said, grounding, stability, and a sense of rootedness, safety, and security.
Mm-hmm.
Safety and security. And so when we were exploring what that means for health, at the beginning of our chakra series, we talked a lot about those things that throw you off balance. It might be something about your finances that is creating a sense of fear or anxiety, or everything around the pandemic. There was a lot of fear and anxiety and inability to sleep well, which then feeds that sense of not feeling grounded and healthy. So that was how we first started off with the root chakra. I love what you said about when the roots are in place, and obviously when they are healthy and when they run deep, that the roots are holding the earth in place,
Mm-hmm.
holding the earth in place. So I just want to play around with that. I suppose that um, a thought that comes to mind is that if the roots of your health, individual health, are deep and sustaining you, then it nourishes and holds you in place, right? You can then live in a more in a happier way, releasing any worries or fears that you don't have a place to be. You have a place to be, and you're holding yourself in place with your own strong roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the earth element is so much about being able to trust. And so when we are when it's out of balance and we're in worry and anxiety, then it's really hard to have a solid foundation for your daily health practices, right? When you feel safe, then you can explore new options. You can call in healthy decision making. You can trust your intuition and follow it. So, yes, so beautifully said, Yvonne.
Oh, okay. And before we move on, you just from what you said, that the earth is about trust, and suddenly I thought about sand, and if you feel like the earth is just crumbling underneath you like sand, then of course you're always going to feel destabilized and out of balance and not in control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I love the way these metaphors work.
I know. I love it. I love it. I wonder if it's because at my heart of hearts, I love words and wordplay and the meaning of words, and I love puns and everything. And so I think this is all coming together. Okay, let's move on to chakra number two, which let me see. I believe the Sanskrit name for the root chakra is Muladhara, and I think I had that right. I think that's right. I've
Yes.
forgotten, yeah. And the sacral chakra, or the sexual chakra, is Svadhisthana, and it is about, well, yeah, okay, I'll say, yeah, it's about identity, it's about sexuality, and um, yeah, I'm going to say creativity,
Mm.
and its natural element is water.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm feeling like when we go into the tree metaphor, and there are a couple things coming in. When you say identity, I think it's really valuable to look at the way that trees identify the individual as part of the whole. And we as humans are such social beings. So a lot of this sexual identity, and I feel like this is why the gender identification is so up in our world right now, because this is such an important way that we identify ourselves in relation to our community, through this way of interaction, through the sexual identification, through the sexual interactions. And this sexual energy is actually very strongly connected to life force energy. And so when we think, and in Chinese medicine, it's direct connection, the kidneys, the water element, the gonads are considered the second kidneys. That's where our reproductive organs, our reproductive health is vital to our life force energy. And trees actually pump water from their roots to their tips of their leaves, and it takes them about 2 hours. So we have a heartbeat that's very fast in comparison to a tree, but they're also moving energy in that way. And I can feel how trees draw up all of that root energy in order to bring health to their leaves and flowers. And that's where their sexual interaction happens. That's where their connection with insects or other, pollinators happens through the flowers, and then it creates fruits and or seeds and returns to the earth. So I feel like that water cycle, which if we think of water, I mean, when we take a drink of water, it goes down through our system.
Hmm. I'm going to do the same with my new Van Gogh immersive water bottle. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I wanted to take a sip of water to invite everyone to maybe, if you're watching this, also take a sip of water so you can have an immediate sense of what that feels like. when that fluid goes into our system and we taste it, it wets the mouth, it goes down through our throat and our digestive system. And I love how you can actually feel it percolating throughout your system. And so a tree will actually drink water from the roots and from the rain if the rain falls and they're absorbing water. And so this is really a place where we can also connect to that energetic feeling of the water of the earth coming up energetically through our system like a tree. And there's such a cleansing as well as just activating the life force and the reproductive abilities. The creative energy is also how we create in the world. So it's reproduction, physical reproduction, but it's also how we create in the world. So I
Mhm.
like this idea of feeling like, okay, how does this activate you? How does this activate you for physical healing, for well being and life force? And how does it activate you to bring your creativity into the world?
Yeah, creativity. And I'm so glad you talked about reproduction because that and the connection with the gonads and the kidneys. And yeah, I was hoping you were going to talk about how trees move fluid through, creativity, the ability to be flexible, and not be locked into place. If we talk about the, rootedness, that's sort of being locked in one place. But you even talked about that being able to move and sway, so that flexibility, and that can only happen when you have the water element. When we focused on the sacral chakra during our chakra series, we had a couple of guests who talked to us about body image. And that again starts to speak on that identity. Who do you feel yourself to be versus what the outside world is telling you to be? And then does that create blockages in your health? Does that bring feelings of anxiety or disordered eating, which was a nice setup for where we were going to go with the third chakra. But we also had Bridget Belden on, who talked to us about people who are mothers who now have become empty nesters and who struggle with their sense of identity. And so that's an area where we can be reminded of the importance of owning what our identity is. Yeah.
Oh, and I love that because, yes, we often, if we are mothers or parents, this happens for parents of all genders, that we can start identifying with just that bringing of children into the world or parenting, taking care of children in the world. And then we forget that that same energy of reproduction and caregiving can be redirected into beautiful creative offerings through that same energetic chakra.
Oh, Kira, yes, what a great connection that you just made. First, from the overbalancing of the parental role, and only putting your energies into that, and then neglecting or missing out perhaps on the creativity. And I see now that's another way that Bridget is helping people step into the creativity, letting the creativity bloom in their lives for other pursuits once the parenting role has not come to an end, but is maybe not so prevalent. So yet another connection
Mhm.
there.
And trees are so nurturing and such caregivers. They will have an entire community living within their roots, trunks, branches, and so thinking of this creative energy and what are you birthing? I feel like in your work, Yvonne, there's also a really strong opportunity to utilize this creative birthing energy to birth a whole new set of habits and lifestyle and deeper connection to your body's ability to be constantly in renewal. We're always reproducing new cells, and when we give ourselves the right nourishment, we can actually be creating youthful cells in an otherwise aging body, which is
Mm.
quite amazing.
Yes. Girlfriend, I feel like I need to pay you for this session. I'm getting so much out of it. Oh yeah, this is wonderful. I love these thought connections. Okay, let us move on to the third chakra. Let's see, which is I have forgotten the Sanskrit name for the third chakra. Does it come to mind for you? Um, it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
I'm
Um,
so out of practice in my Sanskrit.
I know, I know. I can get it. I can get it. Once I turn this back to you, I will get it. But it's the solar plexus chakra,
Mhm.
and it is located in the area of the digestive
The
system.
Manipura, I'm gonna
Manipura, that's it, exactly. I was
when you
gonna,
said
I was gonna
it
say, I
came
know it
back to
starts
me.
with an M. It starts with
Does
an
it
M. Yeah, it's
Manipura?
Manipura.
Hmm.
Manipura, which I just love, and it's about digestion and fire. This is something I learned from the little bit of Chinese medicine that I partook of, was that digestion is a fiery process of things being burned and turned into a new essence. And I just love that about digestion. And so from a health standpoint, the most obvious thing was, well, what foods are we eating? What are we putting into our gut? What's going on in the gut? So I'll stop
Hmm.
there from the chakra and health connection. And now let's throw it to you for trees.
Yeah. And as you were speaking of digestive fire, yes, in Chinese medicine, but then it's also the Agni in our Vedic philosophy, right? The fire from within and turning the fire inside. And so when we think of the trees, and I actually have done chakra connections with human chakras, with tree chakras, and of course trees have a little bit of a different chakra system than we do, but we can think of this energy moving up the trunk. And I love what you were saying about Chinese medicine, because we talk about putting the fire under the water. And we might think this fiery chakra might feel like it doesn't really go with trees, because fire burns trees, right? And turns them into ashes. And yet, this is part of the cycle of life. And trees are very much connected to the cycles and the seasons. And fire is an important part of the whole cycle of life. And I live here on the west coast of the United States, which is considered a fire ecosystem, which is a very challenging ecosystem to live with in sometimes, because fire can rage out of control and burn down the whole forest. But when in balance, what the fire does is it burns the old dying underbrush, recycles it into the earth, and creates a renewing, nourishing earth that new life springs from. And so this is in I the heart is really the center of the chakra system, but I often experience the solar plexus as kind of the center of where our energies come together, where the energy from heaven that comes down through the crown and the energy from earth that comes up, that's kind of where they start to blend into that beautiful heart energy at the center. And so that's where I'm feeling the solar plexus in connection with trees, is the way that the energy from earth and from heaven, they bring in the sunlight. The sun comes in through the leaves, the water comes up from the earth and the minerals, and then they blend in the trunk in order to create new growth, new
Mm-hmm.
leaves in the spring, new life.
Mm-hmm. I'm really enjoying the discussion, the metaphor of fire and when in balance, burning down, creating ashes, which creates then the foundation for new growth. and new life. Even a decomposing tree is its new life springs from that. I'm seeing
Mhm.
some other connections. The one thing for the solar plexus from a mindset standpoint is that it's about focus, it's about projection, a project projecting forward, willpower. It can also be about protection,
Mhm.
garnering the willpower to bring something to the fore. And so, if I think about protection, I know a tree provides protection for lots of other, many other life forms and beings. But
Mhm.
then just going to the digestion side of it, then and then that process of feeding, I think of photosynthesis, fire, solar, the rays of the sun, solar plexus with the branches and the leaves reaching out, receiving the heat and the fire from the sun and turning that into its own food, its own nutrients. So
Yeah, it really is. You very briefly mentioned the Chinese medicine idea of alchemy, and this is the trees demonstrate it so beautifully with photosynthesis. In Chinese medicine, they would talk about putting the fire under the water. They say the fire element comes down from the heavens and the water element comes up from the earth, but then when we flip them and put the fire under the water, it creates steam, and that's what the trees do. They take that fire of the sun, they bring it in and bring the water up and create this magic of growth from what seems like just such really basic elements.
right. Well, they're giving us oxygen, right?
And giving us oxygen and
And
often food. There's food, whether it's food for humans or
yeah.
food for squirrels or birds or
Hmm.
insects. They're creating food
Yeah.
for other life forms by alchemizing the sunlight. It's pretty
Right.
amazing.
It is amazing, isn't it? But also water and moisture, right? Because some of that moisture is then released and added back into the cloud structure, which then just brings it down. So it's, oh my gosh, we've got to take care of our trees. We've got to take care of our trees. This is the last day of that COP24 summit in Glasgow. They're bringing it
Yes.
to a close. So, yet again, another perfect synchronous event happening here. Um, I wanted to just say one more thing before we move on about the solar plexus, Manipura, and willpower. This is where, if you have in your mind to take action or that an action is needed, it is the solar plexus. If you're strong in your solar plexus, strong in Manipura, that you will marshal the energy that you need to make it happen. The plan
Mm,
happens somewhere else. The plan happens in the sixth chakra, in the brow chakra, third eye chakra, the executive place in your brain. But the willpower, the will to power it into form manifestation is through the third chakra, chakra number 3. And so,
mhm.
if you have the desire to change your habits, to change how you eat, to change how much you move, to set up a meditation practice, the actual doing is going to come because of the fire that you put underneath the watery idea and bring it into form.
I love that. And I wanted to add one more thing that came to me when you were speaking. How important it is to take care of our digestive system for this exact reason. If our digestion is working for us and we're absorbing our nutrients, then we are supported in standing in our power and making good choices for ourselves. And when we're in the cycle of suffering that happens when we haven't been taking care of ourselves, then it feels like so much to reach this state of health and shift these habits, and so hard to resist the extra piece of cake or whatever it is that's throwing us out of balance. So I just wanted to remind everyone that it is kind of like when we take one action to support starting the digestion, the healing in the digestive system, that will actually support every other action that you know that you need to take to claim your optimal wellness.
Mm. Thank you for bringing it back to that. So important as we enter into the holiday season, right? So important. I had a thought about that either this morning or late last night that, it's not about depriving yourself during this very important time of celebration, which is often marked by food. Uh, and instead of becoming anxious about it, just know that everything is open to you, and therefore it need not be scarce. It need not be something that you deprive yourself of. And yet at the same time, you have a choice. You can make a choice. You can make a choice knowing that it is there in abundance. And so maybe you don't have to eat as much of it, or you don't have to be worried about overindulging if you just take a little bite here and there. But that's a larger discussion that we can, whew, that'll take us down a rabbit hole. Yeah,
Yes.
that'll take us down a big, huge rabbit hole. So let's move on to chakra number 4. For some reason, this one just keeps coming back at me. Anahata. I love the name of it. Anahata, the heart chakra. I'll let you kick it off with telling us, how do you relate heart chakra and trees?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So much here. So I love how the meaning of anahata, the yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to get it perfectly right, but it's like the soundless sound. It's the silent sound, the anahata. And so this is very, very connected to trees. And the heart chakra, the heart itself is what emanates our larger electromagnetic field as humans. And the trees have the same toroidal field that goes up through the central channel, out, around, down under the roots, and back in. And so they also have an energetic heart. They also, as I mentioned, pump fluid through their bodies. But there's a deeper connection here, and there is the Heart Math Institute has done a lot of research, is currently doing a lot of research with this energetic heart of trees and how the electromagnetic heart of trees and humans connects. Every time that you go into the biosphere of a tree, you are receiving soothing, calming vibrations. And trees have been shown in these studies to respond to human emotions. And so it's actually a real biodynamic, energetic relationship. I'm sure if you've ever gone into a forest when you were feeling down or heartbroken, you have felt that support that the tree energy offers you, even if it just feels like, oh, I can take a deeper breath now. I have a little space around this pain that I'm feeling in my heart. And so if you are not a tree hugger, I really invite you to just try this experience of connecting your heart energy to the heart of a tree. It's very, very powerful to experience the healing vibration. There are so many ways that trees heal us. So I'm going to pause there because this, again, each one of these topics could be an entire show in and of itself, which you are
Which
well
they
aware.
were. Which they were, although not quite at this same depth. Okay, so thoughts that came up to me as you were speaking is that, the heart is the physical location of chakra 4, but also the arms and the hands, and then the organs that are around that. And so those arms and those hands are like tree branches and leaves reaching out and connecting us. It's also about compassion and self-compassion. We talked about grief. You actually are starting to touch on that if you've gone into the forest when you feel feeling a little bit down. And then trees, let us not forget this incredible ability that trees have to connect to one another as well as to us. And they do that through the mycelium. I was fascinated to read in this book, The Hidden Life of Trees, that if one tree is ill, that the others around it through the root connection will reach out and help feed and nurture that tree, showing it compassion and
Mhm.
connecting to it and helping to take over when it's diseased, or under attack in some way. So I found that to be just so fascinating. So compassion, self-compassion. We had guests on the Vibe who talked to us about self-care, taking just like what you said at the beginning, and how you, Kira, work with healers so that they can heal themselves from within and then help other people help heal themselves from within and thereby heal the
Mhm.
world. So it's that starting from the inside out. And then one of the
Mhm.
things that is my vision with Vibrantly Living You is to offer my group program, Vibrant for Life program, where we would focus on the 7 pillars of health. Once again, focused on, not focused, but inspired by the chakra system. And one of those is making sure that you spend time outdoors in the environment, primarily among trees, because of that forest bathing component where they are actually changing the atmosphere around, the compounds, the phenols that they give off that are beneficial to us and help protect us. So a
Mhm.
lot.
Yes. And the Anahata chakra is our relationship, where how we relate to the world. And so being in balance of giving and receiving, as you were talking about tree branches, I really think of that, how trees are amazing models of being in balance of giving and receiving. Like you mentioned, they will send nutrients to trees that are ailing. They'll even keep stumps alive if that was a very important member of their community. And they don't only nourish trees of their own species. There's a really beautiful balance between birch trees and Douglas firs, where the Douglas firs send carbon to the birch trees in the winter when the birch trees don't have their leaves, and in the summer when they do have their leaves, they're blocking the sun from the Douglas firs, so they return the favor. And this balance of giving and receiving is a huge part of my work, because often healers tend to be over givers, and then they find themselves burnt out, frustrated, just over it with nothing to give. And we have to remember that in order to give, we have to receive. When you allow yourself to receive and overflow and give from that overflow, then you'll never run out of giving energy.
Mm. Oh, thank you for making that connection. I just want to say that yes, that's true for healers, but it's true for so many of us, just people, women in particular, overgivers. I find I do that myself, overgiving, and then suddenly I feel depleted. So I love that you brought out this balance. The trees represent that balance of giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. We've got to have both. Find a way to receive. Find a way to give back to yourself if you've spent a
Mhm.
lot of time giving out. Well, this is definitely going to be a slightly longer vibe. Two, so this will be the third, or fourth vibe, has gone a little over our 60-minute mark, but only because you're hearing it first here. Fascinating new thoughts coming together. So we're going to go a little bit over. We are now on to chakra number 5, the throat chakra, also known as Vishuddha. And I'm really curious. I'm not going to tee up my ideas, but I'm really curious. What would you say? Well, okay, I'll throw out this one little morsel that the element of Vishuddha is vibration and sound. So with that little kernel, how do you relate trees to chakra number 5, Vishuddha?
Ah, beautiful. Yes, the vibration, sound, expression, and it's I really love the way that you can sit in a forest and hear the sounds of the trees. And there are audible sounds that come just from the trees. And you actually, in the springtime, people have heard this water moving through the trunks, but I'm thinking more of the movement, the creaking, the birds in the trees. For me, the a tree represents its community. A tree is an individual organism, but it's such a community organism. And the throat chakra is where we share where we share our ideas that come from above, and also where we share our ideas that come from the heart, our deepest longings and yearnings. When we really have a nice open throat chakra, we can communicate ideas clearly, and we can also communicate our needs clearly. And I think this is where the trees are, because they're so community oriented and their expression is so much about the whole. I would even include, like I said, the bird song in the trees as part of this sound vibration that comes through, the insects buzzing, the scurrying little creatures that like to live in the trees. I suddenly had an image of a squirrel sitting up in a tree and just like telling you all about it. Have you ever had a squirrel just like telling you all about it? So I I think there's a deeper place of where the trees give us full permission to be who we are, to express authentically from our heart. And this is where I feel like the healing in the throat chakra is so valuable, because so many of us, especially women in a patriarchal world, have felt like we have to keep a lid on it. And we are expressing what we think. Usually when you think you're expressing what other people want to hear, you're just expressing what you think other people want to hear. And when we really have permission to express who we truly are, to express authentically, there's so much value that each one of you out there has to offer, just as you're witnessing Yvonne and I having something special to offer through our expressions.
Amazing to me that you brought in authenticity in there. There are so many ways we can connect to that when we think about trees, because yes, the throat chakra is about communication, expression, expressing your authentic truth, expressing peace, communicating your ideas. All of this is part of the throat chakra. And when you do that, then you release yourself from blocking off what it is that you truly want to say and be and how you want to show up in the world. We talked about just a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, I guess now, how blocking that true expression of yourself, it leads to disease. That connects back down to even the second chakra. If you're blocking who it is that you, or you're not allowed to express who you truly are, then that leads to disease. The first
Mm,
thing that comes to my mind, whether it's mental or physical diseases, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about the vibration and the sound of trees is the sound of the wind through the trees, and how calming that can be. So that is, and the vibration, the creaking, that's vibration, right? That's just the tree itself, let alone the insects and the birds and the squirrels that are
Yeah.
chatting at you. But I love that there is that sense of that can be there, that can be a soothing sound, falling
Mhm.
to sleep or waking up to the gentle sounds of wind humming, humming,
Mhm.
vibration, again, humming through the trees. Or if it's out of balance, this is something I learned growing up in Oklahoma. Too much wind, was a really, really scary thing. I'm wondering about those trees. And whether they were
Mhm.
going to hold or not. So yeah, there are a lot of connections to sound and vibration, and I guess the tree creaking and
Mhm.
blowing in the wind is its natural expression of its
Mm.
authenticity, and a reminder for us to do the same. You said when you sit in the forest and you can hear the sound of the trees. I thought what you were going to say was that, you sit in the forest and you can hear your own quiet voice
That
coming
is
through.
also true. That is also true. And there's one more piece that you're reminding me of in terms of Chinese medicine and the wood element is it's connected to the liver. So this is where our wood element physically may get out of balance is when we have a toxic overload and we're not nourishing with enough green foods and glutathione, which often shows up in green foods like asparagus and avocados, and um, and the emotional component in Chinese medicine of the wood element and the liver is being either having out of balance anger, frustration, resentment, or in balance, it's clear expression of healthy boundaries, clear, compassionate, kind expression of healthy boundaries. That's what trees represent in Chinese medicine. And so there's that additional connection there to both how sometimes if we're not expressing when something bothers us and instead we stuff it down and we have all this suppressed anger, resentment, frustration, then that actually can really damage our health and well-being. And when we are able to express clearly with compassionate, loving kindness our needs and our boundaries, then we're able to create a safe, healing space for ourselves and also for our loved ones.
Mm, well said. Kira, you're going to make this so hard for me to recap in any short, summary form. Folks, you're just going to have to listen to all of this. There's no way I can edit this out. This is fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful insight here. I love this. We've actually brought in something else. And now we're talking about the connection with Chinese medicine as well. Yeah. So
Mhm.
we're talking chakra, trees, health, and Chinese medicine. So this is great. Lots of stuff here. Okay, let us move on in the interest of time to, I feel like we're just there, the third eye chakra, known as also called the brow chakra because it sits right here between the brows, the third eye. Its Sanskrit name is Ajna. I love how that just comes off of the tongue, Ajna. It represents intuition and insight, inner wisdom,
Mhm.
among other things. What would you say from a tree standpoint about Ajna?
Mm. Well, it's kind of taking me back to my initial experiences with trees and telepathic communication. Often we can think of the third eye chakra physically showing up in our pineal gland, which is a really tiny gland at the center of our brain that actually has little teeny tiny crystals all over it. And this is why it got its name pineal gland because it looks kind of like a pine cone, kind of like a part of a tree. Imagine that. And it is considered our center of expanded awareness. So, beyond our physical awareness, how can we connect to insight and wisdom that is beyond the physical experience? And trees, in my experience, naturally just do this. They connect us back into this most expansive place. And we can, through breath work and through specific breath work techniques, we can bring more energy into this area of our brain. And so Dr. Joe Dispenza has done a lot of research of how we can physically activate this gland at the center of our brain that's connected to the third eye and the center of insight and wisdom. We always have fluid moving from our brain to our sacrum. The craniosacral fluid is called that because it's flowing through our spinal column from our brain to our sacrum, and it's usually at the speed of about 6 seconds at an average, and it's not directly connected to the breath, but we actually can affect this movement with our breath. And so this also, when we're talking about trees, I think of that slow fluid movement. I think the slow fluid movement of a tree, it reminds me of this slow fluid movement that is naturally happening between our, really literally between our chakra systems, from the root to the crown and back again. This is happening physically, not just energetically. And so when we can make these connections to how our energy systems actually are part of our physical system, it's not separate from, right? And so this, if we can bring more of the fluid into our brain and pressurize the pineal gland, it actually literally lights up. These little crystals light up under pressure, and having more fluid in the brain pressurizes. And so these techniques of activating the third eye actually affect the whole system. The fluid is renewed, refreshed, and then when it flows back down, it's nourishing our entire nervous system and soothing our nerves, which allows our body to go into healing mode.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, that is the best explanation ever, ever. Expanded awareness beyond the physical experience, intuition, insight, inner wisdom, and that physical connection that you just laid out for us with the pineal gland. And yes, isn't that great? I knew it was named for a pine, pine cone, pine nut, pine cone trees. But that physical connection of that up and down movement, yes, same with trees, that has got to be why when somebody wants to sit down and meditate, or you're going through a guided meditation, it always starts with the breath. So bringing, getting that cranial sacral fluid, getting that channel cleared and activated to expand out the pineal gland. Doesn't that make sense? You heard it first here, folks.
Mhm.
I haven't been imagining this at all. Thank you, Keira. That was fabulous. I want to talk more about it, but we probably should move it forward and come finally at long last to the crown chakra, Saraswata, the crown chakra, chakra number 7, which is about unity and connection and transcendence. First, I got to say, it's obvious to me, crown of a tree, the very
Mhm.
top uppermost part of it, and the crown of the head. Take it
Mhm.
away, Keira.
Yes, beautiful. Um, and I was thinking as you were talking also about the symbology that shows up in both Vedic and, philosophy and Chinese philosophy around the crown and the thousand petaled lotus, the flower opening to the heavens to receive that energy of light that comes from above. And yes, the crown of a tree is very obviously spreading to receive the light from above. And we talked about how the tree takes that light in the form of sunlight and turns it into nourishment, not only for itself, but for its entire community of different life forms. And as I mentioned earlier, in Chinese medicine, they vary, they're, and really both line up. All of these ancient wisdom practices you'll find lining up in very similar expressions. And it's interesting to me that the crown is such an expansive place, a place where we open to new ideas, to new perspectives, to, like you said at the very beginning, connecting to our higher self, which maybe allows us to have a bird's eye view over our life. If we climb to the top of a tree and we're in the crown of the tree, we can look out and see the whole forest. If we rise up into this expanded new perspective, we may get new ideas of how to take charge of our lives, to take charge of our health, to see a clear path forward into the life that we really want to live.
Mm, yes. And then it all begins again because it's not about getting up to the crown and then you keep on going. You got to bring it back down into the root and
Yeah.
reroot, pull all of that, back up, the creativity, the ideas, that new sense of identity, find your find your way to solidify it and fire it up in the imagination and connect to other people and speak your truth and set your boundaries. It just keeps on going because we are these renewing
Hmm.
beings, renewing, oh, connected to everything that's out there. Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
And I really think of the crown as much of bringing in all that expansive energy into the central channel, into connection with the roots, as it is expanding outward. It's definitely also it's a place to bring in expansive energy and integrate it.
Mm-hmm. And it's also about our evolution, right? We
Mhm.
we have to renew ourselves, and each time we're reaching for that how can we be just that little tiny bit better in
Mhm.
self-development, self-growth, personal development, personal growth, and connecting. And here's my thousand petaled lotus behind. Always at my back.
Mhm.
Always at my back. Another thing that we noticed when we came on without even planning it is that the colors that we are wearing are complementary completely and totally. Your background is the same as what I'm wearing, and my background is the same as what you're wearing. That
Mhm.
synchronicity of being connected. Yeah,
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And
yeah.
um,
So many.
yeah, this piece that I'm wearing was just gifted to me from my sister, who it belonged to my younger sister who passed 2.5 years ago. And so I feel this strong connection, not only because it has petals, kind of like the lotus, but also because it's connecting to me to a spirit, the spirit world through my angel sister. And this is very much another aspect I find with the crown is that we get to expand our connection to life through allowing ourselves to be connected to our own mortality, and that our mortality, yes, it's a reminder of how precious this gift of life is and how we should guard it like the utmost treasure. Our health and well being is the greatest treasure that we can have here on earth. And to recognize that there is something more available to us in allowing ourselves to recognize that there's a gift in our mortality as well.
Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Oh, so many little things I want to pick up on. Uh, One thing that I do typically as I end each of these series is not series, but each episode is to offer up a chakra food and a chakra move of the week. And the chakra food is just simply brown rice. Brown rice because it is high in the B vitamins and riboflavin, which are extremely good for the brain. And since the crown chakra is, sitting just above the brain, we've been focusing on those foods. So brown rice, which is good for the digestion. It's different from white rice, where all the nutrients have been cracked away. And when you digest white rice, all you're really digesting is you're just getting sugar. But when you digest brown rice, you've got the bran there, and that provides necessary fiber that aids your digestion and goes right back into everything that we were talking about earlier, like during the holidays when all of a sudden you're drawn to all of these sweets and everything, then you just don't feel good and your mood gets yucky and your body gets plugged up and everything else. So it's all connected. Once again, it's all connected. The crown chakra tells us it's all connected. So your brown rice is your chakra food for the week. See if you can work some of that in. And for your chakra move is savasana, the corpse pose. So
Mm.
simple to do. Just lay on your back. Let your palms face upward. You can close your eyes. Let your feet naturally begin to fall apart. And if for any reason there's a difficulty in maintaining that position because of tightness in your low back, you may want to put a bolster under either your knees, probably slightly underneath your knees will make it a little bit more comfortable. The trick with savasana is to allow your thoughts to just to float, to not be fixated on what you need to do when you get up from the corpse pose, but instead to receive the benefits and sense that connection by taking deep relaxing breaths and simply allowing yourself to be in that connection. It may also be helpful to visualize bright white light entering through the crown of your head and then traveling the length of the chakras, just as Keira explained with that um, cranial sacral channel, up and down with each breath, up and down to expand the pineal gland and expand your awareness. And that's when you'll receive the maximum benefits from your chakra move, which will be savasana, the corpse pose. So that is enough of that. I must say, Keira, thank you from the bottom of my heart and every single one of my chakras for being here and sharing depth, your depth of information about the chakras and how we can use them as a metaphor for health. This has just been illuminating beyond belief for me.
Thank you so much for having me, Yvonne. It was such a pleasure to be here.
Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful lead up to the end of the year. I understand there are only 50 days left, thanks to my friend Anne Greenwald, and who had pointed that out to us. She was also a guest on The Vibe. Everybody, remember that a vibrant life is yours for the taking. We're here for you because you put the you in vibrantly living you. So get out there and grab that vibrant life for yourself. Bye for now.